Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with our feature, Nadine Gordimer, who died recently at the age of 90. She was a South African writer who took on apartheid. She described the conditions in South Africa before apartheid was lifted. She was a political activist, and she won the 1991 Nobel Prize for Literature. Here's South African TV on the death of Nadine Gordimer.
How's my life been as a writer?
One of the most powerful anti-apartheid voices, South African novelist Nadine Gordimer, has died.
That's a strange experience.
She started writing at the age of 9 and used her pen to battle against the inequality of white rule for decades.
What does this represent?
Gordimer was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1991.
If literature is to have its unique place...
Despite her hatred of apartheid, Gordimer was proud of her South African heritage and said she only once considered emigrating to Zambia. Some of her novels, such as Burger's Daughter and A World of Strangers, have been banned by the apartheid authorities. More recently, she became a vocal campaigner for the lobbying and fundraising for HIV prevention.
Matthew Bannister on BBC4's Last Word put together a nice piece on Nadine Gordimer. Here's a snippet from it.
Now, when the South African writer Nadine Gordimer won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the citation said it was for her great epic writings centering on the effects of race relations in her country. She was an outspoken critic of the apartheid regime, and her books cast light on the human struggles caused by that divisive code. Praised for her short stories as well as her many novels, Nadine addressed the moral dilemmas faced by South Africans who lived through those turbulent times. Here's an extract from her novel, The Conservationist.
Swaying over the ruts to the gate of the third pasture, Sunday morning, the owner of the farm suddenly sees a clutch of pale freckled eggs set out before a half circle of children.
When you begin to write, you have a certain fresh sensuousness that comes from the smell and the look and the feel of things.
There is pride of ownership in that grin lifted shyly to the farmer's gaze.
When I began to want to write as a way of exploring the mystery of life, becoming aware of the big questions. Why am I here? What are we all here for? Why do we live as we do?
Nadine was born in the small East Rand mining town of Springs, the daughter of Jewish immigrants. At first she went to a convent school, but her mother decided to remove her, so she was left to educate herself.
Then I was reading pretty widely and wildly because I was dependent upon the local library, and I was a bit like a little pig in clover. I just wandered from shelf to shelf.
At United Nations headquarters, the Security Council places on its agenda a discussion of South Africa's apartheid crisis.
Nadine studied for a year at the University of Witwatersrand, where she met leading black writers and intellectuals. And as Professor Emeritus Dennis Walder of the Open University explains, her political consciousness continued to grow.
After the Sharpeville massacre of 1960, after that had occurred, the repression really increased. People being rounded up everywhere, white as well as black. A very close friend of hers called Betty Dutoy was arrested and taken away, and she was terribly shocked by this. It led her to actually join the ANC and to start to help people by hiding them in her house and providing other kinds of material support. And it was at that time that she met Mandela before he was imprisoned.
I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony.
Nadine's friend Maureen Isaacson says the relationship with Mandela was close.
When he was in prison, it was at the time that her novel Burger's Daughter was banned, and somebody succeeded in smuggling the copy into Nelson Mandela, and he wrote to her, and she called him her most exigent reader. And so he communicated with her, and when he came out of prison, she was, I think, the first person or among the first people that he asked to see.
I'm not by nature a political person, but to say in South Africa, well, I'm a writer, I'm struggling with the word, as we do. I'm struggling to make sense of life. I'm struggling with the mystery of life, with the mystery of human relationships, and therefore I've got nothing to do with politics. I found that you couldn't do that in South Africa. I couldn't have kept my self-respect as a human being.
She says that every white South African has to be born twice, and the second time into an awareness of their own racism. And she says this happened to her actually through writing.
Of course, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature at a controversial time, I think, for South Africa. What was the reaction when that was announced?
Well, very interestingly, F.W. de Klerk did not, who was the Nationalist Party president, did not congratulate her. And I see now that his foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, has put out a statement praising her for her criticism during and after apartheid. And I keep wishing she was around so I could tell her what's going on. It's really funny.
She was, extraordinary. You felt he was, a really sharp person of kind of indomitable will and great courage.
What do you think are her greatest works?
I mean, I think if she hadn't been such a good novelist, I think she would have been up there with Chekhov in the quality of her short stories. I think her short stories are actually her greatest achievement, not just because there are over 200 of them, but because very often they're quite sort of open-ended, and they give you a glimpse into another world from your own, which at the same time takes you into it in a way that is quite extraordinary and compelling.
In my many books, personal relations, which have got nothing to do with politics or indeed are influenced by them, but they are there. Because to me, writing is, whether mine or anybody else's, a discovery of life. It's an attempt to discover what human life is about.
Nadine Gordimer.
We're going to move on now to Alice Coachman-Davis, who died at the age of 90 also. Alice Coachman-Davis was the first black woman to win a gold medal in the Olympics. She won the 1948 gold medal for the United States in the high jump. She was born in Albany, Georgia. She went to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. Throughout the 1940s, she was clearly the best female track and field athlete in the United States. She dominated the AAUs in both the sprints and the high jump. Had there been Olympics in 1940 and 1944, it's a good bet she would have won gold medals, but they weren't held because of World War II. So she finally got her chance in 1948. In London in the first Olympics held after World War II, both she and her British counterpart jumped 5 feet 6 1/8 inches, but she won because she did it on her first attempt. And the amazing thing is she did it using the scissors kick, and that would be the equivalent, considering her height, of a jump of 7 feet 4 inches. So it lets you know what a great athlete she was. Here she is describing her experience at the 1948 London Olympics.
When the torch is again passed and the Olympic fire rekindled in London, a high-flying Alice Coachman sets a new world record for the high jump and becomes the first black woman ever to take home the gold.
I like to win. If I want to do something, I like to do it right. When it came to the tryouts and all the rest of the girls was nervous and whatnot, didn't bother me. I would sometimes win the national AAU in my warm-ups. It was nothing to me. The only competition I had from 1939 up until 1948 was at Providence, Rhode Island at the trials. My event was the last event in the 48 Olympics. And when I walked out there, there was 85,000 people out there waiting. But I didn't worry about anything because I said if I can do it, I'd do it. I had guts enough to do it. I didn't like for anyone to beat me. After I won the gold medal, King George awarded me this medal, Queen Elizabeth's father. And that's something that I can remember for a long time because reading in history about the king and the queen, I got a chance to be awarded my gold medal by the king.
Natural championship talent draws this Georgia native into the realm of royalty and brings international status to the black woman athlete. Returning home, she is even honored by President Harry S. Truman.
Well, she was, but she still faced a lot of segregation after that, segregated parades and things like that. But she was a hero to many of the black athletes who followed her. Her story was part of the beginning of the civil rights movement of the late 1940s and early 1950s, along with Jackie Robinson in 1996 at the Olympic Summer Games in Atlanta, not too far from her hometown of Albany. She was named one of the 100 greatest Olympians of all time. We're going to move on now to Red Klotz, who died at the age of 93. Nice Jewish boy from Philadelphia. And we've talked about the great basketball tradition in Philadelphia, and he was part of it. He went to Villanova, was a star there, and played in the forerunner of the NBA, the Basketball Association of America, where as a 5'7" guard he won a championship. He had one of the best two-hand set shots in the history of the game, but his fame is as the player coach of the Washington Generals, the team that was the foil for the Harlem Globetrotters for all those years in all those countries. He lost countless games, 14,000, 16,000, who knows how many, playing against the Globetrotters. But besides being a great basketball player, he had great showbiz instincts and was a tremendous ambassador for the game of basketball for over a half century. Here's a report on red clots.
Walk along the beach in the ocean, clears your mind.
At age 89, Louis Red Klotz will have to walk this sand for a long time to shed his reputation he earned on the hardwood.
But I didn't get famous, apparently, until I became the biggest loser that ever lived. I'm the loserest coach in the world.
He wasn't always considered a loser. As a young kid from the streets of South Philadelphia, the diminutive Klotz worked hard to fit into the game of basketball, a game that caters to those with size and strength.
I used to dribble around the trash cans to get to the schoolyard. I just found the game fascinating, challenging. I was probably the fastest guy in that part of the city.
Klotz's hard work here in the streets paid off. He was the Philadelphia High School Player of the Year in 1940. His freshman team at Villanova went undefeated, and he made it all the way to the NBA, becoming the shortest player in NBA history at just 5'7" to win a world championship ring.
I shot probably better than most of your NBA players today.
But what would follow his NBA career would stay with Red forever.
Abe Saperstein, the originator of the Harlem Globetrotters, asked me to form a team that can make them play some tough basketball.
Red would become one with the red, white, and blue, the congenial team of comics, basketball's Harlem Globetrotters.
We introduced basketball around the world. Who's Tatum? They knew about the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. Here's one of my old jackets, Washington General.
The Washington Generals, the army of losers, and their playmaker Red Klotz became the straight man to the antics of Globetrotters Meadowlark Lemon and Marcus Haynes as they entertained basketball fans around the world.
We played because we loved the game.
For decades, Klotz played and lost and would eventually coach and own his own team of losers. But his pregame speech was always the same.
I tell them you go out to win. I tell them to go out there and show them how good you are.
Losing aside, Red was a trailblazer, laying the groundwork for today's NBA.
We were doing it, making history around the world, while they were trying to get on their feet. And incidentally, we helped them stay alive. They weren't doing too good in the early years. I want to show you something I carry around with me.
Today, Red still takes to the court, and he is still spreading the word.
Nothing but basketball.
About the game he couldn't live without.
The golden basketball has given me more adventures than most people's in their lifetime.
Though it's been more than 2 decades since he has played professionally, he still owns the Generals and his famous two-hand set shot, money. But with the 16,000 losses behind him, he'll never sink that label of loser.
Losing's part of life. Losing's part of life. The idea is to get up, keep going.
We can always learn something about the game's disappointments. It's what makes losing count for something and winning taste so good.
And here comes the losingest guy in the world. What's he doing?
Yeah, but I wanted to give you that. The irony is he's a winner. He's lost all of these games, but he's promoted basketball. He's put all of his kids through college, had successful businesses. Basketball's opened up a lot of doors for him. So is he really a loser? I don't think so.
Red Klotz, the general whose army never won, the man with a closet full of memories, will tell you that in his life, he feels like he's never lost. Basketball has allowed him to see the world, put a smile on his face, and walk this beach with the joy of knowing that he gave back to a game that gave him everything.
No, they're going to carry me off the court. I will go quickly, and I hope I have the ball in my hand when I go.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer, Sid Tepps. And we're going to play a closing tribute to Red Klotz with a song that might as well have been written for him. The best known version is done by Ray Charles, but we closed with Ray Charles a couple of weeks back with Ruby Dee. So we're going to play this song by Marty Robbins. My man Marty Robbins does just as good a job as Ray Charles with this one, Born to Lose.
Born to lose, I've lived my life in vain. Every dream has only brought me pain. You were all the happiness I knew. Born to lose, and now I'm losing you.